Okay, so welcome to this week's video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you get a chance. Also sign up for our newsletter. Today I'm going to answer a question that no one asked. It's going to be a tech tip, and this is just going to be one of these things I'm going to do a little bit more of, and this is just something I was thinking about. I organized a little bit of stuff, so I thought I'd talk about it while it's fresh in my mind. So what I'm going to talk about is how to create a Rstudio server on DigitalOcean, but this will work on any Ubuntu server. But at the end, I'll show you a super easy way to do it on EC2. Okay. So DigitalOcean is one of these places where you can, run your own server really cheaply. Okay. And so go to bcafo DigitalOcean scripts and look at the README. Down at the bottom, it's going to say to set up an Rstudio server. So these are the commands we're going to need. But first, we got to start up our server. Okay, so we want to click at DigitalOcean. We want to log in. We want to create a droplet. Droplet's what DigitalOcean calls its servers. Right, it's got this whole like ocean theme thing. So you'll see when we click create droplet, you get little swimmy fish, and swimmy fish means DigitalOcean is thinking, okay, it's done thinking, it's ready to create the droplet. Okay, Ubuntu 16.04, we definitely want that. Choose a size, pick the cheapest one. Very important part, you definitely don't want the $640 per month monster server with 64 gigabytes of RAM. You just want the smallest one. And you can resize it later. It's not dynamic, you have to shut down the server, but you can resize it later on if you want to run a big job or something like that. So you can resize it just for when you do that job and then resize it back to a small one super easily. Adding block storage, that's just if you want more hard drive space, so just leave that for right now. If you want to add more storage later on, you can do that. I live closest to New York of all these places, so I'm just going to leave this at New York. I'm going to click yes on my SSH key, ID RSA. I'm going to say, I just want one droplet. I want the name. I'm going to use the default name, but probably pick a better name, or at least add, if you don't pick a better name, then add a tag or something like that. Just if you wind up with a lot of droplets, you wind up forgetting what each one of them is for. So maybe if I put Rstudio server on the tag, I'll remember. But I like to choose better host names, but I'm not going to do it this time because I'm just going to destroy this as soon as I'm done. Okay, we get a few seconds of swimmy fish. A status bar as it's booting up our server. Here's a name. I got some other ones like Rstudio server is my kind of one that I use all the time. Okay, it's booted up and there's our IP address. Now I need to give it a second because when I try to log in right off the bat, sometimes it doesn't let me because it's still booting up like the SSH daemon, that sort of thing. Also, if you don't have your SSH keys set up, then what it'll do is it'll email you a password. You're going to have to use that password to log in. If you want, you can actually use the console here. It has a little console. You can log in from there. But I like to use the SSH keys with my terminal. So I'm going to bring down my terminal. I'm going to SSH. I don't know why that's not working. Okay, so I want to SSH root at, and then my IP address, which I copied from DigitalOcean. And then it's going to ask if I want to add that fingerprint to my list of authorized keys or authorized connections. And there we go. Okay, so now I'm on my server. I can do stuff like type ls. There's nothing there. Now I need to create a user. It's generally not good Ubuntu practice to do everything from root. So let's create a new user. I've got the commands right here. Add user, new username. So why don't I add user, I'll call my new user Rstudio. And then it needs me to enter a password. I'm going to enter the password Rstudio. Doesn't matter. Oh, yeah. There we go. And then I'm just going to leave all this stuff blank. Is the information correct? Yes. Okay. Now you want to log in. We want to make it so that this new user has super user privileges. So my new user was Rstudio. There we go. Now that user has super user privileges. And then I want to log in as that person. So now if you see, like, look at my command prompt, Rstudio at, Ubuntu, so now it's Rstudio, not root. So I'm not root, but I have root access. So what this means is I have to type a little bit of an extra command to do root things, and this means that I just can't destroy, important system files without actually thinking a little bit first before I do it. I always like, here's a trick, by the way. Sometimes these command prompts get too long. So if you just do ps1 equals, whatever you want it to be, now I have a really short command prompt. Okay. All right. Now let's go back here. Here's the two important commands. Okay. First I have to wget this little script that I wrote, and then while it's doing it, I'll explain the script. And then I just set up the script. Oh, I gotta give it my password, and then now it's starting. Okay, now let's go through what the script is doing. Set up rstudio.sh. Okay, so what it does is there's little notes here to tell you what it's doing at each step. It gets R, okay. It's installing RBase and RBase dev. I got this all from this person right here, so you should check if you want to see their rationale, and they also tell you how to set up a Shiny server right here. Dean Atali. So I got almost all the commands from here, so it's really good. Read his blog post. It's fantastic. Any rate, so I also added installing rdev, just because I like to have dev on as well. This creates some swap space. We created such a small server, we don't actually have the RAM necessary to actually install stuff. So we're going to fake RAM by using the hard drive, and that's what this sort of RAM drive is. Okay, and then these libcurl, these are libraries required. And then this just installs two packages. It installs DevTools, and it installs Shiny, but I think that was just from that guy's his package. I don't think that's actually necessary for RStudio, so I should comment that out or get rid of it. And then these dependencies are required by RStudio server, and then it just gets RStudio server and installs it with gets the .deb file, installs it with gdebi. That's just Ubuntu's and Debian's installation command. And then the last line I added here is I don't like the fact that by default RStudio server is on port 8787. I put something in so that it's on port 80. That just is adding a line to this system file, etc rstudio rserver.conf, and then we restart the RStudio server. Okay, so let's see how our thing's doing. Not so good. Okay, so this is going to take a while, so I might pause the video and come back while it finishes this. This usually takes, I don't know, several minutes. Oh, actually, no. While I'm doing this, I'll describe how to get an RStudio server set up on EC2. And this has the easiest way. So if I type in like RStudio server EC2, Louis Aslett is the guy's name. There we go. He has very nicely gone ahead and created the AMI here. So all you have to do is go down to an AMI where you want it to be. So let's say US East Virginia, okay? Click on it, okay? You gotta sign into Amazon, okay? And then, let's just say free tier, you want a micro instance, the smallest instance that you can possibly get, okay? You want all your kind of common settings, and then launch. And then you have to choose a SSH keys. Okay, so now it's running. Let me get it's now booting that machine up. So this is on Amazon's EC2. And while this is going, let's check. Still working here. All right, that's good. Okay, now it's up and running. we click on connect, we can see you know, how to connect to it, but I just want the IP address. Let's go to that IP address. Now sometimes, by the way, when you first start it up, there's a problem in that it takes a while for things to boot up. You also want to make sure that the ports are open. So here, when you one thing you may have to check. So probably what we have to check. Let me redo it again, just to double check. Is the whether or not it's the firewall is letting in the traffic. So networking, change security groups. So it's at this launch wizard. It's at launch wizard 1. I think. So I have. Let me see. I have this one. Launch wizard 12 is one that works. So I'll show you it working first. Launch wizard 12. Let's change that. There we go. There we go. Now it's working. So I'll show you that it's working first. Now it's Rstudio and Rstudio. And now you just have an I'm not going to save that password, but Louis Aslett, who maintains this, does a great job. And among other things, he gives some scripts, A, that'll set up Dropbox for you, and B, that'll set up a new user, or at least set it up so you can change your password. If you log into this machine and create a new user, there will be an Rstudio instance for that user. So if you do library Rstudio AMI, you can change your password here in R, and you can link Dropbox in there. And the README tells you everything about how to do it. So this is a really great, that's a really great one. Great way to do it. And let me just show you, where's the network? So you want to go to networking and security groups, and then just to remind ourselves, we were in Launch Wizard 12. Okay, so networking and security groups. Where is it? There we go. Click on security groups. So Launch Wizard 12. So you want to edit inbound rules. Okay, so you got to make sure that you have port 80 added to the security groups. Otherwise, it won't automatically let the traffic in over HTTP. Okay, and then edit outbound rules. You also want port 80 there. Okay, so just make sure that whatever security group you're using that has those things set up, and then it'll work. And then to destroy the, to destroy our instance, right? You just go to instance state. So stop will just stop the machine. Reboot obviously will reboot it. Terminate gets rid of it. So I don't want this because I just created it for this example. So I'm going to terminate it. Yes, terminate. Okay. So that's how you can do that on EC2. Super easy. Okay. Now let's see how we're doing on installing it. Okay. All right. Looks good. Active and running. Okay. So where's our IP address? Copy that. Boom. All right. Rstudio and Rstudio, but here you're just entering your username and password that you created. Okay, and then logged in. So now you've got Rstudio running on a DigitalOcean server. Okay, now in order to destroy your droplet, click on destroy, little swimmy fish for a second, and then destroy. You got to confirm. Now your droplet's gone. But anyway, it's a super nice way to run Rstudio. I actually kind of prefer it, even at a desktop, to use my Rstudio instance, Rstudio server instance in the cloud. So give it a try. As I showed, it's super easy, both on EC2 and DigitalOcean. And if you have any success, let me know in the comments.